Huh.
Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
At the Musial with Alan and Daniel, we'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good evening and welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Usual. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. Alan's still doing the baseball thing, the coaching of the young minds. We've got an interview with him at the end of the show if you want to stick around for that. But filling his chair tonight is... Russ Robinson. Man, I just blanked. I was thinking Uncle Frank because that's what you are on Twitter, FFR Robinson at 1957. So I almost called you Frank Robinson. And I was like, that's probably not right. Russ Robinson from Redbird Rants and everything. Russ, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's we're here on the night. The Cardinals are about to start their second game of the year. We've had opening day. We haven't had the home opener yet, obviously, but we have one game in the books. And I know we need to talk a little bit about the injuries and some of the things that happened at the end of spring training, but let's just kind of dive in to yesterday's game. And Katie Wu today in an interview I saw, she called it a tribute show for last year's season. And I feel like that was pretty accurate, right? I mean, they go out and they're down by the end of the first and things never get better and they don't hit. And pretty much everything that went wrong last year went wrong on opening day. How concerned do you get on that? It's one of 162, of course, and there's a long, long way to go if you can't lose a division or anything on opening day. But how concerned were you after that?
I'm some concerned. I was concerned going into spring training with the rotation they were presenting, and Sonny Gray goes down, and they have to lead off with Miles Mikolas as your opening day starter. If he's the best they got, and I'm sure if they thought they could have gotten more out of Kyle Gibson or Lance Lynn, if they felt more comfortable with them, they would have gone with them. But they went with Miles. I didn't get a good job from it, Daniel, from that game. I mean, it just didn't look like it just didn't have a good feel about it. And we've seen them lose opening day games before, but I never felt one like this. That 7-1. It just seemed like the offense was just blah, and you get 4 innings out of 4 2/3 innings or 4 1/3 innings on Miles Mikolas. I just didn't have a good feel. So yes, I'm concerned, and I'll be concerned until they start getting some of these people back and seeing what they can do when they have everyone back fully healthy. But I just haven't had a good feel all through spring training. I haven't, and yesterday's game just didn't make me feel any better. So.
Yeah, I think that, if you go in and you lose a 3-2 game yesterday, it's like, okay,
right,
you lost a game. If you even lose a 7-6 game, it's like, okay, we knew there were going to be games like this, and the offense looks like it's strong enough. Now, when you lose a game in the manner that they did, it just kind of, like you say, kind of reinforces all those bad things, or all the things that we said, hey, this could go wrong, or this may not work. Um, it all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this really looks like it might not work. Now again, one bad game, it is a little bit frustrating that Miles Michaelis had a fairly good spring. Um, and then to be the one that comes out and just, gets hit. It got hit hard in times. I mean, there are a few that weren't, but 2 home runs, some hard hit balls around. I mean, that's what we were afraid of. And so to see that in a game that matters, in a game that you can't write off as, oh, they're working on something, or, oh, the wind was, helping, or all the general spring training excuses that you might have, to see it in a real game against a very strong opponent. Yeah, I think that just until, now, hey, maybe Zach Thompson comes out tonight and pitches a great game, and maybe Lynn and Gibson pitch well on Saturday or Sunday and Saturday and Sunday. I got to remember what days I'm talking about. But and maybe that kind of eases it up. But when you only have that one data point, it's it's hard to get a whole lot of excitement about it.
Yeah, and we know the Dodgers are going to be one of the best teams in the National League. I mean, they're just stacked. But they lost to Tyler Glasgow.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy almost gave up 1 run. I don't know how long he pitched, but I mean, 1 run. I mean, like you said, if it had been 7-6, then you have a better feel about it. But 7-1 just didn't seem like it was. It just didn't seem like a. I don't know. It just didn't seem like there was much there to build on. But I'm sure hopefully in August we're eating crow with this
Yeah.
this podcast, and I'll be happy to eat crow if everything turns around, so.
Well, anybody that's listened for any length of time knows how wrong we get on stuff. So that would not be too
Yeah.
surprising. But yeah, I just and again, the pitching staff, the bullpen looked okay, although he did give up a couple
Yeah.
of runs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing, like my Gateway co-host was referencing this in a different way today, but it was like you and I are tied for second in hits and home runs on the Cardinals, right? Anybody not named Paul Goldschmidt doesn't have anything yet.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I mean, let's put that aside for a second, but it was nice to see Paul Goldschmidt have a good day because he'd had such
Right.
a weak spring.
Right.
So for him to come out and get, 2 hits, a home run, that's good. That's an encouraging sign. But
Mm-hmm.
to get nothing else out of this offense is not good, because this is what's supposed to carry the team.
That's right. That's right. The offense is. We knew going into the season this rotation wasn't going to be great. It might be, and it might be okay eventually, but we know they're going to have to get offense and they're going to have to get really good defense for this team to go anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And so we'll see how that goes. So we did get to see, the debut of Victor Scott II, and I want to let's talk about how he got on there. I guess let's put it that way. Dylan Carlson and Jordan Walker decide to tango in the outfield, and Carlson got the worst end of that. Thankfully, he doesn't. And we'll get into some of the. They've had some updates on the injuries tonight. We'll get into those in a little while, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be just terribly serious. But still, given all the other outfield injuries that are going on, Victor Scott II makes his debut. Now, were you one that thought that he should have made his debut anyway, given the way the spring went for him?
No, I really think bringing these guys, spending so little time in the minor leagues, I really was fine with them sending him back, sending him to minor league camp. I think at one time you and I exchanged messages either on X or Discord, and I said I was predicting Victor Scott would would make the team, make the roster, but I didn't really think it would be a good idea for him to. No, I didn't expect it to come to this. The Cardinals are relatively conservative with their prospects, and they usually want to give them plenty of time to develop. They don't want to ruin them. They had kind of this experience with Jordan Walker last year where they sent him back down, brought him up a little earlier than they thought they might. So I really didn't expect them to come up, but boy, he looks fast. I mean, he does add speed to the team, but it's just one. We'll see if he doesn't hit at all. How long can they keep him on the roster? If even with his good defense and his speed on the base.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely something you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
But and I've made this point here and other shows. There's just you only get 26 men, and
Right.
you're about to have to figure out how to get Lars Nootbaar and Dylan Carlson, and then at some point Tommy Edman on this team, and how are you going to do that and keep Victor Scott? It doesn't seem like it's very likely he's going to stay for very long. I know there's the whole Vince Coleman story of they told him he was only going to go for 2 weeks, and he made sure that he never went back down. But the situation's a little bit different as well.
Yeah.
So
right.
I think that he knows that. I think that it may be good that he's on the 40-man roster now, so they can have him later in the summer without having to worry about some things. But I don't imagine the Cardinals were necessarily. I think they felt like they needed to do that. It was really their only option, but I don't think they were terribly excited about having to make that call already.
No, they were backed into the corner. They had to. I mean, he was about it. I mean, they didn't really need it. They had to bring him up, and so I'm like you. I don't expect him to. When the other guys get ready to come back, someone's got to go back down, and I don't expect them to keep him up here, and warm the bench behind Edmonds and Dylan Carlson and Nootbaar. I mean, he needs to get his bat, so I'm sure they'll send him to AAA when that time, unless he's tearing the ball up or something like that. But I don't expect to see that this time up.
Well, like I say, you've got Michael Ciani, who it is a little bit surprising the Cardinals didn't just run with Ciani out there, right? For 2 weeks, instead of kind of pulling the trigger on this, assuming it's going to be that way. And it looks like it's going to be. I know that you never know for sure with injuries and stuff, but it looks like it may only be 2-3 weeks. So you could see them putting Ciani out there, letting him play center, because he's definitely got the glove for it, right? And then maybe Donovan and Walker on the flanking him, and maybe that means a different bench back comes up. I'm not even sure who's on the 40-man that would come up, but they didn't go that way, and that's fine. Obviously, like I said, we're excited to see Victor Scott II here, and he's already got one stolen base, and I imagine he'll probably have a handful more before he goes back. But it is a little bit. I don't. The Cardinals are not necessarily tied to. Again, we think about Jordan Hicks, making that jump from single A up to the major leagues. Whether that worked out for him or not, I guess we'll have to see when his career is completely done. Obviously, he looks pretty good, or did this spring as a starter in San Francisco, and you wonder what the Cardinals might have had if they'd left him where he was. But so they've brought people up from Double A. They don't necessarily. They're not excited about. They're not like aggressive at bringing those guys up, but they're not going to every single length to make sure they don't. So it's not, I guess, not too surprising they went with this route, but I guess I am just a little bit surprised that for a short period of time, and maybe they were just not sure how short the period of time was going to be, but with the guys that they knew, Lars Nootbaar was pretty close. They were fairly sure about him, I thought, coming back sometime in April. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't just run with Ciani.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, is Siani and Scott the only center fielders right now on the active roster? Is that right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean,
So,
you know,
yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm too, but I guess they figured they needed another center fielder, and they just
yeah,
said, if we have to bring up Scott, we might as well play him. You know,
sure, sure.
yeah, so yeah, once Carlson went down, I knew that probably Scott was going to be called was going to be put on the active roster, and then we were going to see him a lot. So it will be kind of fun watching them, and it was kind of fun watching them steal that base yesterday. That was one of the few highlights of the game. So, well,
Yeah, yeah. Anything that gives us a little bit of highlight. That's a
yeah,
good thing.
yeah,
Um, so, like I said, the Cardinals wind up with a middle record. I think they were 13-12 or something like. They were, right around 500 for the spring.
hmm
Like you said, the pitching staff never really solidified, never really seemed to be an issue. But then we saw Kyle Gibson, and we'll get a chance to see if this carries over. We did see Kyle Gibson in his last start have a really good start. You know,
hmm
maybe that's a sign of, we do use those excuses of they're working on stuff. Maybe they finally, that was a game where he was, actually trying to pitch, and it worked out. I don't know. Do you think that might carry over, or are you still just figuring that might have been like you're every once in a while going to get a good game out of these guys?
um, I don't. You know, I hate to put a lot on spring training. What you see in spring training, I've never really
Hmm.
counted because guys can struggle in spring training and put it together. I've seen Cardinal teams
Sure.
who've had great spring trainings and come out of the gate and have a bad April and everything like that. So
Hmm.
no, but I'm not enthused still. I guess with Gibson and Lynn and uh, you know, I'm just not. I'm not excited about seeing them pitch the first time. I hope
Hmm.
that Kyle's last start was a good sign, but I'm just not sold on these pitchers. That every time they're going to come out and give us a steady 6 innings or even 5 innings. I think there's going to be times where it's going to become an up and down. Uh, it's going to be up depending. It's going to be up and down, I imagine, with these guys. And I'm going to say that with Gibson and Lynn and with maybe Mikolas now, and so
Hmm.
I guess Daniel, I'm not enthused with what we got in a rotation, So uh, I'm not even sure, and I'm going to step out here. I'm not even sure I see a better rotation than going into this year than what we had last year. You figure Jordan Montgomery's kind of in the Sonny Gray role, was in the Sonny Gray role, and then you had Mikolas, you had Wainwright, you had Flaherty. I mean, you know, you figure Flaherty had more upside going into last year than any of them. And I'm not sure
Right.
there's anyone with that much upside in the rotation that Flaherty had. Now we know how things worked out with Flaherty, and it didn't work out, but still, yet there was a lot of upside with Flaherty going into last year. So, so I'm not sure I see this rotation at the start of 24 being a lot more impressive than what 23's was. That's just me. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think going into it, I mean, especially because we thought Adam Wainwright was going to be, he'd pitched well the year before, and so you didn't
Right.
expect him to just completely step off the cliff like the Coyote does in the
Right.
Roadrunner cartoons. Um,
Yeah.
you did think that Jack Flaherty had some potential. You probably had to get something good to Montgomery. Um, you thought you'd be okay with Michaelis. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, Sonny Gray has more upside, has a higher performance level than anybody from last year.
hmm
But yeah, when you average it all out, when you take the whole thing together, there's not that much difference. And then when you lose Sonny Gray for thankfully not a long period of time, it doesn't seem like, but
Right.
still, you don't know when that's going to flare up, right? He's had hamstring issues before. If you're
Yeah.
having to pitch without him for a while, this rotation gets really pedestrian very, very quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah. Yeah. so I'm just not excited right now. I'm glad baseball is back, and I'm looking forward to watching the games on Saturday and Sunday. I don't like West Coast games, but you know, but I'm glad they're back, and I'll look forward to the game Saturday and Sunday, and keeping my fingers crossed on tonight's game. I won't stay up with it, but when I wake up in the morning, I'll check my phone and see how they did, and hopefully find out that Lance Lynn had a good outing, and so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, well, I mean, I'm a little bit excited tonight, like I said, with Zach Thompson going, um,
Mm-hmm.
because he's
Is it
got that
Zach?
upside. Yeah,
Is Thompson?
they've got him. They've lined him up in the second spot. I think it's mainly because
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
it gets them on a spot where uh, in probably Thompson will probably make the next start, but then his what would be his third start is probably about when Sonny Gray can come off, and so Gray will slide
Okay.
into that spot. I think that's why they've got him in the second, not because it's a hey, you're our number two, which would be pretty bad, right? I mean, if your
Yeah.
guy that you've got in your is now all of a sudden a number two ahead of all the guys, these other two guys that you
Yeah.
signed this offseason, then you're starting to ask why did you sign these guys if you've got people like that. But I think it's more to do with a little bit of logistics and stuff like that, and it may be a good
Okay.
matchup. We'll find out and see as that game starts here in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean that's about the only excitement that there is. You know, going into a game, you really are looking to say if okay, well maybe you know Nolan can or Gorman can hit one, or maybe they can put some runs together because they're not necessarily. I want to see this guy pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that will change when Sonny Gray's here, and we've seen,
Mm-hmm.
we saw last year the negative
Mm-hmm.
version of this. I think of one starter would be bad, and then the next starter would be bad. But we have seen it in the past where one starter can start a run of good pitching
Mm-hmm.
through, that they all kind of step their game up a little bit. And it's very possible that when Sonny Gray gets back, he brings out the best of them. Now, is Lance Lynn going to throw a, 8 strikeout, two no run complete game? Probably not, right? But if you can get some good outings out of them as they try to, one up each other,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there'll be a little bit of excitement because that momentum will start going and you'll get some good pitching back and
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
I don't,
think
I don't know how much I
last year.
believe that, but I'm hoping, I guess.
Yeah. Well, last year was incredible that the fact that the whole rotation was bad from the start. And
Mhm.
and I've never seen that happen before. So there's no reason to believe all these guys would be bad in April, too. So it's no reason because I'd never seen that before where the whole rotation just seemed like they broke down in April, and
Mhm.
they never really got much traction after that. It was somewhat better, I believe, in June.
Yeah.
But by the time they started getting some traction, the Cardinals are pretty well out of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to believe all five of these guys would be bad in April. So,
Yeah. And that's kind of what you worry about with Sonny Gray out, and you're out in the West Coast. You face the Dodgers and the
mm-hmm,
Padres, good teams. You come home, then you go back out there to face Arizona, and I've forgotten who else they're put. I don't know if that's when they're playing the Angels or what, but they got to go. Basically, they've got 2 West Coast type trips in April, which is not ideal, I don't think, for a team that's trying to get off to a good
mm,
start, and then
yeah.
to lose Sonny Gray for a bit. They've got some stuff stacked against them, and if they can, I think that honestly, if they can play 500 ball for this month of April, I think you feel pretty good about it, right? I mean, you'd rather
I
them be
would
better,
take
but
Yeah, I would take that if they played 500 ball in April. I would take that in a minute. Um, because like you said, you've got the Padres. You got the Padres coming up next, so there's 6 games on the road right away out in the West Coast. So
yeah,
yeah, if they played 500 ball in April, I think you should take it. And we've seen that happen before with good teams. They didn't play well in April, or sometimes even into May, but gave them some time to get grounded and get started, and that might be what this team just needs, just a little time to get grounded, just as long as they don't get too far in the hole.
Yeah, because that was
Before
last year,
June.
right? Yeah, last
Yeah,
year we were talking about this at the first week or two. We're like, okay, well, the 2004 team was 500 until like
yeah,
June, and then caught fire, and these things can happen. But then when you got out of April, and I think you were 10 games out already, and
yeah,
or at least
yeah.
10 games under 500 or whatever, and it was like, okay, this is going to be really hard to dig out of, and then they
Mm-hmm.
didn't ever dig out of it. So, I don't know. I mean, if you're 500, but your team ERA is 6.5, I mean, you're hitting is going well or something, but it's like, how sustainable is that? Do you really get concerned that a crash is coming? But if you're playing 500 ball and everything's okay, hitting and pitching are okay, nothing just really really bad, then I think yeah, maybe you can tread water, because this is a division that you can tread water in, and
Uh-huh.
probably stay in the race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you can play 500 ball most of the year, uh, and then have a breakout in August or September, yeah, you're going to be okay. You're going to be
Yeah.
okay with this division. Um, I was looking at the April schedule. And, they've got teams like the Brewers and the Athletics.
That was the other one.
In April,
Yeah.
so that's a good chance for them to to get some ground. I don't know what the Mets and the Tigers, so I don't know. I don't know, what, but it looks like they have a chance. And by the time some of these teams come up there, hopefully some of these guys will be back. So anyway,
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to start talking about it. Katie Wu put out, and I'm sure others did. I just happened to see her tweet, but that's, I'm probably every single media person put it out too. I just happened to see Katie's.
yeah.
But she's got some updates on these guys. The main thing is Sonny Gray threw 3 innings today in a sim game. He's going to pitch in Memphis on Wednesday. Good chance that after that he'll pitch in St. Louis, assuming no setbacks or anything like that. And he
Mm-hmm.
probably would be a little bit limited on pitches when he gets to St. Louis, but
Mm-hmm.
um, that really, I mean, if you only miss 2 starts, it's not ideal, again, because you're facing the Dodgers and the Padres. Yesterday's
Mm-hmm.
game goes a lot differently, hopefully, with Sonny Gray on the mound than it did with Miles Michaelis. Um, but if you can get away with just missing 2 starts for Sonny Gray with this, I think you kind of breathe a sigh of relief and hope that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about maybe he comes back the first homestand, maybe against the Phillies. You know, maybe
Yeah,
he'd be ready to come back then. So if everything goes well, yeah,
yeah. I think the Cardinals would have really liked him to be back for the home opener. Um, I just don't know that that's. I mean, I haven't got I printed a schedule out. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I don't think that that's
that's
quite
Thursday.
doable.
It's Thursday the 4th against the Marlins. That seems a little
Yeah,
soon.
yeah. I think
That's
you're
why
good.
I
Yeah,
said,
like they're talking. Yeah, that Philly series is, you're right, is probably the more likely to be what we're going to see
mm-hmm,
from him. But again, that's also good, because I mean, the Phillies are a good team, and you're gonna, if you're gonna have,
yeah,
you want Sonny Gray pitching against the good teams.
mm-hmm,
I think, and that's one
sure,
of them. So,
yeah,
um, and then good chance that he would face the Diamondbacks out in Arizona for a second start. So that
yeah,
kind of gets you back into pace. So that's
mm-hmm,
good.
right,
Lars Nootbaar took 8 live at bats today, and he's going to play in a simulated game tomorrow, about 4 innings. So all that kind of makes it sound like, assuming no real setbacks, if he's playing in a game tomorrow, sim game, he might even be out in Memphis by Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, getting a couple of games there, and then back around that same time, right?
mm-hmm,
Probably, maybe at the end of the Marlins series, maybe right there when Sonny Gray's coming up in Philadelphia.
right,
It doesn't sound like he's going to be too far back, and that's a big deal.
mm-hmm, yeah, exactly, yeah. Need that extra his bat back in the lineup, and um, yeah, yeah, it looks like if he's playing Tuesday or Wednesday in Memphis, then I would say the Phillies.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe would be when he could come back. That'd be good. That'd be good news. And especially have him back before, because right after the Phillies, they hit the West again with the Diamondbacks and the Athletics.
Yeah.
So it'd be good if they could have him back. They could have. I don't know if Carlson can be back by then or not, but I don't
That's
expect to see Edmund. I don't expect to see Edmund this month. I mean, April at all. I just don't think.
yeah. Well, and I mean, again, to continue to what Katie was saying, Carlson is in the best possible scenario. He's received an injection, but if it's best possible, I'm thinking that's a situation where, again, he may only have to play. He may get a couple of games at Memphis or whatever to get his swing back or swing up a little bit, make sure he's okay before he comes up. But it kind of feels like, all three of those guys are looking at that homestand maybe to be back, and that's to get them back before April 15th is pretty good. I feel like
Yeah.
it's almost like you didn't miss them.
Right. 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 Yeah. If they can come back and contribute, uh, whatever happens between now and then won't be too significant. You know, uh, the Cardinals need to win some games between now and then, but if you get those guys back fully healthy, it won't be too big of a hit on them.
Yeah, hopefully not. But Tommy
Mm.
Edman is apparently, to quote Katie, on track, and he's getting an MRI to make sure he can be cleared to swing.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess we'll see how the MRI comes out. I've been one of these things that I start thinking, is Tommy Edman going to be back before the All-Star break? This
Right.
kind of makes it indicate that I think you're still right, though, right? He's not going to be back before early May at the best, because he didn't have any spring training. So
Yeah.
he's going to have, I would think, and they do rehab stints differently than I think they should at times, but it feels like he needs probably at least a week at Memphis playing regularly to kind of get his stroke and build up some strength and
Mhm.
stuff, because he hasn't done anything. I
Right.
mean, he hasn't seen live pitching since last October or even before.
Even before that, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really kind of it's scary to me that the fact that he had this surgery in October, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where he's at right now. He's that's why that worries me, and and I think it'd be lucky if we got him back the 1st of May. I think we'd be very lucky.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, but I'm thinking more the way this sounds. Not before June. That's just the way
Yeah.
it sounds to me. Yeah, maybe I'm taking a pessimistic approach, but for a guy
Well,
who hasn't picked up a bat really since October, hasn't been able
yeah.
to swing a bat. You know,
Yeah. I mean, June might be a little long, but, I think May is your earliest. I feel like. Now, who knows? I mean, these guys, sometimes we think, oh man, they're out, and then, the next day they're playing in the ball game, something like
yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
I mean, you never rule it out, and it's possible that once he gets, but it feels like to me what we've seen out of spring is Tommy Edman would pick up a bat, swing it a little bit, and then like a day or two later, it would hurt enough that he couldn't do anything.
right,
So I think it's going to be interesting, not only how long, when he actually starts, but then what the results are in a couple of days
hmm
after that. If he's able
hmm
to play for a week, then they'll say, okay, here we go. I do think, it's sad because I think we all want to see what Dylan Carlson can do on a regular basis, right? And he was lined up for basically a month of starting in center field before that
hmm
injury, and that's
right,
uh, that's a hard thing, because now by the time he gets back, Edmund might be really kind of close on his tails. He may only get a couple of weeks to
yeah.
just show.
I was really kind of excited to see how Carlson responded to be put into center field and probably being left alone and let him play it out. Uh, you know, that collision, if anything could go wrong for Carlson, it seems like it does.
Yeah,
And uh, you got a guy out there who's trying to learn how to play the outfield, and he's probably one of the might be the biggest guy on the team, and he runs over your center fielder. It's just bad luck for Carlson. It seems like his career's gone that way so far. Uh, but Carlson had a good spring. So I really hope he's back and they can put him in center field and leave him there for a while. I think if he comes back in April, uh, like I said, I don't think we're going to see Tommy Edman before June, if then, and I think I think he can have a good run in center field before they get Edman back. So
I would really, because I'm still not 100% sold on this Tommy Edman as center fielder thing. I know he can play the position.
mm-hmm.
I'm just not really sold on him being the starting center fielder, in part because, I know the center field has a lesser of a hitting profile typically, but, Tommy's a league average hitter at best most of the time. He has some good moments, there's no doubt. And he's a valuable part to a team, but should he be your starter? So, yeah, I'd much rather see, Carlson really take advantage of the situation and be your starting center fielder. And, because we have seen the potential that he has. So he just needs to kind of figure out a way to unlock it again.
Right. I hope to see Carlson. I hope he can pull it out. Wasn't that long ago, Carlson was the guy nobody wanted to trade. He was a top prospect. Everybody was really high on him. And, and now, it's come to this with him. It seems like this is do or die for him now with the Cardinals this year.
Yeah, it really does feel like that's that kind of thing where it's, could he be traded at the trade deadline? Could he be, non-tendered at the end of the year? I think all those things are on the table. I don't know that any of them are necessarily a strong possibility, but they are possibilities, and more so maybe than in the past. So I do think if he's ever going to take a step toward that career that the Cardinals thought he was going to have, that it has to be this year. So
right.
The last update that Katie put out there was that Keenan Middleton will start a throwing program on Wednesday. Out of all the injuries, and not that I hate to say it this way, out of all the injuries, it feels like Middleton's was the one that the Cardinals handle the best. That they don't have to rush him back because this bullpen has so many arms in it and some really interesting ones as well.
Yeah, I agree. That was disappointing to hear about him. I remember reading that he was available, and I was thinking, boy, the Cardinals, they should pick him up, and I was surprised they did. They picked up Middleton because I hadn't been hearing his name thrown around that much, but I saw him on the available people who were still available, a few weeks before the Cardinals picked him up. And I thought, this is a guy they could use in the bullpen. I hadn't heard a thing about it. Then all of a sudden they picked him up. So, yeah, I was just obviously disappointed that he was hurt. But at the same time, like you said, I've felt the same way. I felt, well, this bullpen's in better shape. Much better shape than the rotation is, and they can handle it. I think they can handle it for a while till he gets back. He'll be nice. He'll be a nice addition when he gets back, and he'll make that bullpen stronger. But they can ride it out. They can ride it out without him for a little while.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking at the bullpen right now, and there's not necessarily an obvious, this is the guy that they need to get rid of. Ryan Fernandez with his 40-man roster, or the Rule 5 draft where he has to be on the 26-man roster. But even so, he pitched well in spring, and I think that he would be there even if he didn't have that limitation. I guess without it, they might send him down to Memphis. But, I guess, honestly, when he's ready, you're probably looking at Matthew Liberatore going back down to Memphis. And it'd be interesting then to see if that's the case. Do they send him down to be a bullpen piece like he is at the major league level, or do they send him down to be a starter in case they need somebody? I don't know, because it also probably depends on what happens to Zach Thompson when Sonny Gray comes back.
Right, right. And, I guess a lot will depend on by the time those guys he gets back is who's performing, who's not. And, uh, you know, uh, they may decide they need Liebertor down in Memphis to stretch them out
Mm-hmm.
if they get the opportunity to be a starter in case they need to bring someone else up. I can just about guarantee with the age of this rotation, Sonny Gray's not going to be the last guy going on the IL. I
Yeah.
pretty feel like that some of these other guys are going to spend time on the IL too. So, I think they're going to be needing to have some guys stretched out ready to go. And so whether this is Thompson or Liebertor, they're going to need some. They're going to need those guys eventually before the season's over with.
Yeah, I need to look at Memphis's roster because they've released it. And I don't know exactly. I know when we were talking about it this offseason, that rotation was going to get pretty full pretty quick with some of the guys that they traded, Kloffenstein and Reverse. And then, if Thompson goes down, if you've got a Liebertor in there, I mean, you could have a really full, and Kohlrobi's probably going to, I assume, like I said, I haven't checked the rosters. But they could get full pretty, and if that's the case, then yeah, maybe it is where that's Liebertor is going to be your bullpen guy, and I think that's the best place for him. I don't know. I hate to also point out that right now the Cardinals struck out all three batters in the top of the first, struck out, and Mookie Betts hit a home run in the bottom to lead off the bottom of the first.
No.
And now we're already feeling like here we go again.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. I mean, it's just. Again, that's one run. If this team can't score one run, then I mean it should be able to. But it is, it's just we saw this a lot last year, right? That they kept getting behind, and as a fan, at least, and I don't know what the players, although I got to feel like somewhat it comes to them as well. As a fan, you just feel like, okay, why bother? Here we are again, and we know we've seen this, and it's got to be a bit demoralizing for the players as well. Now, again, they come out here in the second and get that run back, and assuming it's just one run because they're still Dodgers still batting, but get it back. Maybe you swing a little bit, but the momentum is a thing, and to continue to be down in the early going it's got to wear on some of these players mentally, I would think.
Yeah, right in the first inning. I mean, you'd like to see a pitcher get through the first inning without giving up, getting in trouble or giving up runs. Well, we'll see. What is it? No outs.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one. There's one now because Ohtani lined out to Nolan Gorman. So,
okay.
I guess that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, and again, we'll see. I mean, it's like I said, it's early on, and you don't want to have too much of a negative attitude going through this, right? I mean, it is early, and if we're already going to be, extremely worked up and frustrated, we're all going to have heart attacks by the end of May, right? I mean, you've got to be able to take the long view. It's just like we were talking about earlier. It's just hard to do when you're seeing some of the weaknesses that you knew that were there.
Well, when you see after what we watched last year, then you go in concerned that you go in concerned this year about maybe they're making some of the same mistakes. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I thought about this all day, knowing we were going to be talking tonight, but I didn't want to come off across like one game, it's all over.
Right.
With 161 to go, because we might feel silly, in July and August about this. But it's just. So you try to keep positive. Like you said, it's not good for your overall health to start stressing out in March.
Yep.
When you got to carry this thing through September.
Yeah. Well, Thompson got out of the rest of the inning, so it is just
good.
one. So maybe that's not too bad. Not as bad as it was yesterday. Yeah, I think, and also the fact, and I wrote about this earlier this week. I know you saw it. This is such an important year for the Cardinals. I mean, like if they have a losing season, it feels like this is going to I mean, it feels like we'll see if it happens, but it feels like you can't say it was a fluke. You can't say just, bad luck or whatever. It's going to have some serious repercussions. A lot of these
Mm-hmm.
guys aren't necessarily under contract for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Ollie might not be here. Mo might not be here. You
Mm-hmm.
might have a completely new vision for this team if they have a losing season. And that might mean, you know, trying to rebuild a little bit. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
something we've had to go through as Cardinal fans.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just very interesting to see the Cardinals not necessarily go as aggressively as we feel like maybe they should have for as important as of a year this is.
Yeah. Do you think, Daniel, that the philosophy is especially on dealing with the rotation, they're just trying to buy time till they see what some of these guys in the minor league will do? 1 year contracts for Lynn,
Mm-hmm.
Gibson. Is Mikolas on his last year? I think.
Mikolas, no, he has another. Because they gave him that extension. Well, I guess last spring. So he's got 24 and 25.
Okay, and Mats,
And
has he got?
Matt's is the same. No, he's the same 24 and 25 as well. So
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
think
I'm
I think
just
that's right.
wondering if they're just trying to buy time uh, with this. I know they've got Gray for 3 years. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if they're just trying to buy some time, fill in some holes with the rotation until they can see what they've got coming up in the minor leagues. Um, and if they can, as long as the Central is relatively weak, they can feel like they can get away with this and just get into just the team just do well enough to get in the postseason. I just feel like that's kind of what they're thinking. They're not committing till they know they're not going to commit to a Jordan Montgomery or to any key pitch, any key free agent until they can see more what they've got in the minor leagues.
I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, that's one of the reasons they traded for some of the arms that they traded for last year.
Right.
Part of it is financial, trying to figure out what their future cash inflows are going to be with the Bally
Right.
Sports issue, and then when they
Uh-huh.
go, and I feel like it is a win whenever they go to an actual you know streaming program of their own, and if you can, what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some of that, and I think it was also that they didn't want to be locked into something, so they could pivot after this year if
Mm-hmm.
they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Sonny Gray's a guy that's really good, and they still only got him for 3 years, right? I mean, that's not even
Right.
even a long period of
Mm-hmm.
time. I mean, he's got an option for a fourth, and we'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was just the fact. I mean, and Lynn and Gibson especially are older, and you don't want to go too far on any kind of bullpen party piece. But I do think it gave the club an opportunity that if things go south, that one, they have a lot of pieces that they can try to sell off at a deadline, and
Mm-hmm.
two, it allows them to go in a different direction. And if somebody takes over for Mo next year, lets them do it without being handcuffed
Hamstrung.
by
Yeah.
by some of these
Yeah.
contracts and things.
Yeah. 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 And that's kind of the way I was looking at it too. Is Mo's future is somewhat in question, whether he's going to be, how much longer he's going to be around, and even Bill DeWitt Jr. It seems like he's kind of fading away too. I don't know what what I don't know what this organization inside the front office. I just don't get a feel that they know for sure what's going to happen in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
They may be some big changes going on. I would Bill DeWitt's getting up there. He may be getting ready to step down. I don't know if Bill DeWitt the third is ready to step in as a CEO or whatever. He doesn't seem like he's that's where his interest is at. So, I'm just kind of wondering that they're just treading water and trying to keep things, keep the Cardinals somewhat in contention, but without making too many big commitments, and then see where they're at in a couple of years. That's just I'm just getting kind of that jive from
Yeah.
everything that's happened in the last year or so.
Yeah. I do think, though, what I know of Bill DeWitt third, which is not much, right? Obviously, he's been at some of the blogger days. We've had a chance to ask him questions and stuff like that. But I just knowing that he is president of the business operations, but I really seems to have he really has a tie to the history of the club. I know he's been very focused on some of the logos, and he's been the one in charge of like the alternate jerseys and trying to make sure that they kind of fit in with what the Cardinals history is and things like that. I would not be surprised if he would take over the team. That's just me. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but that's my guess. Bill DeWitt, the junior, is 81, if I remember right, and he seems to be in good health, right?
Right.
So I don't know that there's any particular reason to think that he would step down soon. Bill DeWitt III is 56, so which actually I thought he was probably I was thinking he might be a little younger than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would think, again, Bill DeWitt is the face of an ownership group, right? And he owns most of it, but he is not the sole owner. It's not like in the old days where the owner would obviously, pass it down to his son or whatever the case may be. I mean, there may be legal ramifications. There may be a situation where, Bill DeWitt III has to buy his, I don't know, sure, whatever that case may be. But given the choice, I would not be surprised if there's not a thought process of succession going on at some point in time. Again, I don't know that it's soon. But, I mean, we just saw what in Baltimore. Peter Angelos, of course, I don't think he was incapacitated, I guess maybe the nicest way to put it, the last few years, and his sons ran the team, but then they just recently sold it. But, and then if they had not sold it, if they passed away, it would have left him. But I think he was sole owner. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
So, I feel like we have a few more years. I don't imagine this ownership group trying to sell the team. They might, but I think it's not just a business venture. I know we like to say that, they're focused on different things and they've developed Ballpark Village and they want all these revenue streams. And there is some part of that, right? I mean, they're not doing this for free, but I do think that this ownership group, maybe versus some others, is not necessarily out for every single dollar they can get. That they do want a winning team. They kind of want it on their terms. They don't want to go overboard and stuff because they're very conservative. But I do think they care about the Cardinals and I care about what that means for the organization. So I don't know that they would sell it, but I mean, you never know. I mean, at some point in time, I guess they could.
Well, I really wasn't thinking that they would sell it. I was just thinking, how the organization would run after, if Mo steps aside and DeWitt, if he takes less of a role, I'm just wondering how they would run the organization. Because, Bill DeWitt, I remember when he stepped in to fire Walt Jocketty. And that was, I mean, he was pretty active and he had a vision in mind. He knew what he wanted to see, which direction he wanted to see the organization go. And Jocketty was kind of pushing back and he fired him,
Right.
So, but I don't see this, and of course that's been, what has that been?
That's 16. 16 it was years 08. Ago? It was 08. So it will be
16 years ago. He was in. Yeah, almost. He's a much younger man. So it just seems like this
we all were.
Yeah, they tried 16 years ago. Seems like it's always is in somewhat of a transition. and maybe they don't know that where it's going, but it certainly has that feel to me. That we're getting ready to go through some sort of transition here, and see what comes up on the other side. I didn't really think they would sell it, but yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, I get you, and I get you. You're right. I mean, you do wonder what that means when even if he stays in the family, it's obviously going to come at it a different way, right? I mean, that's different people, different
hmm
approaches, more
hmm
quote unquote modern, whatever they may be. But I would not expect that the pocketbooks just come flying open. If I imagine
no,
the financial situation would not change much. I mean, there might be some different approaches to scouting and other things like that, but I have a feeling that the situation with the pocketbook would not be that much different.
no. This organization has never been a big spender. Um,
No.
when other teams started writing checks, I mean, even pre Bill DeWitt and this ownership group. I mean, they always watched what they were spending. So yeah, I don't expect them to open up, start writing big checks. I don't expect them to start competing with the Dodgers at all, or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Would
Yeah.
not think so. All right. Well, we've run about an hour, and thought maybe we could keep talking until the Cardinals got a hit, but I don't know if we've got that kind of time.
Yeah.
Um, it's now 2-0 after heard Tescar Hernandez hit a home run as well. So,
Oh no.
um, you
Oh
know,
God.
just
Yeah.
kind of adding on. But anyway, Russ, it's been fun. I hope
Yeah.
that we can do it again sometime. And you got
Sure.
anything coming over at Redbird Rants? Have you written anything recently?
Well, I'm right now, Daniel. I'm kind of toying around with Substack, and I
Yeah.
haven't put anything out yet. But I started last fall thinking about this, and I've been playing around with some drafts. But I think I'm going to go in the direction of, and I've been kind of inspired by reading what you and Dane Perry and Will Leach and some others have been
Mhm.
doing it. Just kind of use it as an opportunity to expand on not just my thoughts on the Cardinals, but other things I enjoy thinking
Yeah.
about. And
Yeah.
and I've got it named. I've got it, and I've got my first post just about written, and I'm getting ready to share it. But it started out just something to write about my interest in history books and things like that I read. But then I've kind of evolved it into maybe writing, throwing the Cardinals in there too. So I'm kind of that's what I'm doing now. So it may be in the next week or so. I'm going to start. I want to share that around when I finally get enough to do it. But it gives me a little flexibility to write about more than just the Cardinals, about some other
Sure.
things. So anyway,
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Substack, but I have found it to be a place where it's a lot easier for me to write, other than the even than what the blog was. Even though it's really shouldn't be much different, I found it a little bit interesting. And the fact that people can read it on an app or get it emailed to them or something like that is always nice. So I've liked the newsletter aspect of it, and um,
right.
hope to write a little bit more often than once every couple of weeks
Well,
as the season gets going.
You've
But
been doing it about once or twice a week, haven't you, in the last few days?
this week I got a couple out. Yeah.
Okay.
As you get a little bit closer to the season, I try to get a few things out, but it also cost me some much needed sleep. So maybe, maybe that wasn't a good idea, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll try to get that going.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, next week, Kelsey Bird from Peace, Love, and Baseball and various other places is going to join me, filling in for Alan. But until then, for us, I'm Daniel. Good night.
And make sure I get my words right, because I got a decent chance of getting fined, and my wife Michelle will, gosh darn it.
All right, we're here for our weekly check-in with Alan Medlock, coach of the Tulsa Hell Rangers, and occasional podcast host, halftime, part-time podcast host. Alan, how are you tonight?
We're doing good, doing good. Yeah, like you and I were talking about pre-show. We're really hoping for that spring weather. It is, it's touch and go here right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week with some of these spring games, but I know how cold it's been here, and you said exactly, you had that last night. It has got to be hard when you're playing in games that are, starting to get into the 30s instead of the 50s.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I know that I've had these instances over the past couple of years. Like my first year, I know that we played a game right before spring break where that wind was whipping, and it also blew in a big snowstorm the next day. We knew it was coming. We tried to get the game in, one of those things. While we would say we were prepared, we weren't overly prepared. You can't do too much, especially when it's the wind. But we got that situation handled. So yesterday, it was windy all day. Matter of fact, winds were blowing about 40 miles per hour Sunday night to blow in a big storm, and that rained us out on Monday. But it also blew in a front that was really, really cold yesterday. The wind died down. I thought we'd be okay, but boy, as we got into the night, it was extremely cold. So you get past that a little bit. The funny part about it is, well, not so funny for me, but for my listening. I mean, we're looking at 24 hours later, and I can honestly kind of feel it in my joints right now. I mean, my face was windburned. I mean, my ears, I could really feel it. And I mean, I had my full jacket on and everything last night, and my sleeves, my pullover, a t-shirt, my jacket, my gloves. And it was just hard to get away from. And we really felt it today. I mean, we had a full practice. It was going to be abbreviated because we hit the road tomorrow. It was going to be abbreviated, but it was one of those where I had to do a coach's show today at noon. And by the time I got out, I was like, I don't know if I can be out in the cold anymore.
Yeah.
So I rallied the troops right before practice and said, guys, you can blame me for this. I said, but I don't know if I can stay outside in the cold anymore. And I am just whipped from last night. And every hand went up there and they go, we second that. And that group that's never like that. They want to get outside and do as much as they can. And it got so bad today that they went out, loosened up, did their stretch and everything. And then we came in and hit for their, from 2:30 till, almost 5 o'clock, and that's not like them at all. So I could tell that it kind of bothered them last night as well.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, you see it, especially in high school football or in any football, I guess, because of when it plays, you've got those guys that like to be super tough, right? The weather doesn't bother them. They're out there and it's 30 degrees and they got the short sleeves on and all that stuff. Do you have some of those guys, or I know because you and I, you've got the age on you, know better. But do you have some of those players that they're going to do short sleeves no matter what?
We do. Now the caveat with it being at Hale, and this is going to sound awful, is I have a feeling some of these guys are just afraid to ask for sleeves. And not because they're tough, but because of the financial obligations to it. So I like last night, I texted our booster treasurer. I said, I'm a big fan of, if it's 60 degrees, you need to have sleeves on. Well, it was lower than 60 last night. We had two kids that didn't throw with any at all and told me that they just can't throw with sleeves on. I'm like, well, this is Oklahoma and you probably need to get used to it because it's one of those, we're going to start setting a hard rule on that. So yes, we had a couple, and I will tell you, neither one of them complained to me about the cold temps at all last night. So maybe they are just tough, or maybe it just doesn't affect them. I don't know, but yeah, we had a couple guys that went without them last night.
That's either brave or foolish. I guess it just depends.
I agree. That's kind of how I fall into it.
So you got rained out on Monday, but how did the games turn out this week?
Well, this is one of those situations where we knew what to expect of heading out to Collinsville. It is like you and I were talking about last week, Owasso's the 6A juggernaut here. Well, 5A on this side is Collinsville, and they're about 15 miles away from each other. So Collinsville gets a little bit of the Owasso runoff. Mm-hmm. So last night we played, and I will say this. The guy that started on the mound for them was touching 90 pretty regularly. He really knew his way around. He's an Owasso move-in, and our kids were a little intimidated in the first inning. We kind of knew what was coming, but, when your body's moving a little slow to the cold and it's tough to get that motor running a little bit, it's really hard to get any emotion involved when the guy's throwing like that. And they put it to us both games pretty well. We competed and run right up against the run rule in both games, but we were proud of it. You know what I mean? One of those type of situations. And sometimes you just don't belong on the same field as some people. And that's kind of the litmus test of where we want to be able to compete against those guys in the future. And, as a good friend of mine who's the principal out there told me, he goes, our first year when we played you guys, you were dropping routine fly balls. He goes, this is the one where you were getting out of the inning where you were just a little overpowered by our pitching. I said, well, that's where things start, and we feel like we're on the right track. And when you can get the attention of teams like we played last night, I mean, that's kind of shows me that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. And you're right. I mean, I guess that's a good metric, right, for you because you've been there that long. Just to take your team against the same team with the same type of standard and see how much closer you're getting to them.
Sure, and and especially our upperclassmen to see. Unfortunately, with some of the upperclassmen, they can see that the end is coming. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing you have to battle. You have to keep their heads up about it because you want to say, listen, we played the 3 toughest team in our district. And my post-game speech last night, I just said, guys, listen, the way that I look at this, our season starts today. I said, because we went against those teams that we know that are probably going to beat us pretty good because they have experienced kids that have been playing together since the 3rd grade. I said, but that's where we are now. Where we want to be at the end of the year is something totally different. Mm-hmm. And we want to be able to improve enough day to day to go and give our best punch when it matters most. I said, all of our goals are still alive. I said, our win total that we shot for in the beginning of the season's alive. Our district record is still alive. And what we want to do in the postseason is very much alive. I said, so don't let these things break you down. I said, you want to go, you want to improve every day. I said, and that starts tomorrow. So, we kind of had some renewed energy today. And it was really nice, even with some tired bodies, to see that, hey, what we want as a team exists and that we've improved enough on the backside to impress some of these teams that we're going to have a hard time beating all the time to where now we can kind of focus on the future and be ready to play, day in, day out, compete. You keep competing, you're going to win some of these games. And that's where we are. And even in 2 losses yesterday, we figured out a whole lot of stuff about ourselves. We're going to tinker with the lineup a little bit, and we think that the guy that we had as our number 1 coming into spring who has struggled this far was outstanding yesterday. Mm. So we think that he's going to be, if he's righted the ship, and we're going to take it real slow with him, but if he's good, we're going to beat some people. And that's where I think the guys are really starting to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And it's approaching quickly.
Do you think that they're at a level where if they play exactly like they did yesterday, but they're playing it against a lesser opponent, that they're going to win those games?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, that's what adds to my frustration a little bit, because we've had 2 situations to where we've played against teams that in our first 2 district matchups that were much better than we would be, and not far behind where Collinsville would be. Well, they come and thump us at home, and we go to their ballpark, and we play extremely well. Mm. If we ever put those together, I'm not so certain that it's not just the top 3 that beats us. One of those situations, and that's part of my job, and that's difficult. Is as a head coach, you always hear the kids will never want it as bad as you do. But my sales job to show them that they're closer than they think, that's a day-to-day process. And it's one of those to where we're going to knock somebody off. I'm telling you, we're going to beat somebody that we did not think was going to happen because we're close. We stay locked in. We're going to do it. Unfortunately, with some of the mentality that you're coming from that has been historically losing for the past 25, 30 years, it's not as easy for them to see. Mm-hmm. So in a team like ours where the floor is low, if things go bad, they can go real bad for you. But it's going to be a situation where they're going to reach that high ceiling as well. And I'm completely confident that's going to happen. And I could kind of tell just by the look in some eyes last night that they were ready to get past these 2 games as well to go and give their best punch against somebody. So I think that they see it. I think that they're going to figure it out at some point. And we kind of think that it may be this weekend in a tournament that we historically play pretty well. So we think that there's no weather that's going to be issued. The weather's going to be really nice. We think that we're in a pretty good situation for this weekend and moving forward.
So what other is you got the 2 games this weekend then, and then do you play again Monday?
Time. It's tournament time. We always like this trip. It's about an hour north of Tulsa. It's between us and Bahuska, and it's in a really pretty part of the state. We go up there, and we typically, it's one of those situations I was telling you last week. We've typically been the 8 to the host seeds 1. Mm-hmm. This year we're the 7 to the host seeds 2. And I think that we're going to play fantastic tomorrow night because we're not playing that 10 a.m. game, which is a kind of a struggle for our kids. I think they stress overnight the ability to get up and to be there, and not because they can't do that, because mom and dad aren't there a lot of times to wake them up. So I think tomorrow what we're going to do is we're going to get up, we're going to feed them, we're going to leave fairly early so they can go out there and get in the atmosphere a little bit. But I think tomorrow we're really going to play well. And we've seen the bracket. We think that we line up well with a lot of those teams. We play this weekend. We turn around. We hit another road doubleheader on Monday because we're going to avoid some weather, and then we go right into another tournament. And it's after spring break. It's baseball every day, and that's what we want. We want the weather to turn, and we feel pretty good about where we are right now.
Well, good, and we'll look forward to hearing about those things next week and seeing how much that pans out. And hopefully your optimism is fully justified. We'll find out.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is if you start questioning yourself, that's when you're beat. But we stick with it, and we live to our standards, and we hold guys accountable, and you can just tell that things are really starting to flip in our favor, and I feel like the kids deserve it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully so, and look forward to hearing about it next week. But until then, you got a player of the week for this week?
You know what? Yesterday, let me think. It's a tough one because he kind of got knocked around a little bit. I'm going to give it to a sophomore, Nick Terrio, because he's one of those kids that he's really had a struggle. He's had some struggles to where his season at the plate has not been good. He's overmatched by a lot of pitching. He has had some big errors at second base, so much so that we've had to move him into left field. And the funny thing about it is we think we found a gem with him. He's really opened up some arm strength. You can tell he's moving free. He's moving without a 20-pound boulder on his back at this point. So He played really well this weekend. We think that he's one hit away from really taking off. But for him to keep showing up, I'm going to give him a lot of credit.
Well, that's great. You got to do it. That's the biggest part of baseball is you play every day and you play all the time.
Yeah. And you know my motto. I say this on the Cardinals broadcast all the time. Win or lose, you have 20 minutes and you got to get over it because you play tomorrow. One of those things. And he's clearly done it. He has not been a bad attitude. He shows up for morning hitting every day. And, that means a lot in a program like ours. You know what I'm saying? Whether that's, some people from the outside looking in, look at a record and think that that's it, but it's not. It's not. And it's not even close to what's most important. It's the fact that these kids have fallen in love enough to show up every day.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, Alan, we look forward to it, and we will talk to you again next week.
I appreciate the opportunity, and, we're getting going. Weather's getting nice. Opening day tomorrow. So a lot of baseball from here on out.
In the air to right center. Back at the wall. It is off the base of the wall. The Cardinals are going to take the lead. Carpenter has emptied the bases, and with the 3